Well, this panel is, we have a series in our third part, which is community response to the environmental risk in Mecca community panels. Our first group will give us an oversight and the multiplicity of the toxic sites. We have Sergio Carranza, who's the director of Pueblo Unido Community Development Corporation, and Margarita Gomez, who's the leader of the Pierce Community Committee. If you can step up here. Right? Yeah, we'll have you come up here. We have you set up. We will, looks as though we're running a little half hour late, so I'll try to go through not that I want to cut anybody short, but we'll have a presentation, and then we'll have, I want to get to the public testimony. So, Ms. Gomez, thank you for coming. Mr. Carranza, if you would give us your opening remark or your statement, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials. On behalf of Pueblo Unido Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization and a member of the Advocates Coalition for Healthy Communities. Today, I have come to you to continue working towards a new environmental challenge. The potential that the Eastern Coachella Valley might become a landfill area. As we have been discussing, the contaminated soil recycling facility by Western Environmental in Mecca has inflicted alarming health problems to the population. In addition, there are two other sites that remain a hazard to the health of the community. The Lawson dump site next to Duroville Mobile Home Park and Mount San Diego east to the Desert Mirage School. These sites have been polluting our communities for almost a decade without action. There are other issues that, in our expertise, constitutes a substantial threat to the health of our communities. Families living in the vicinity of Lawson dump site still express their concerns of fumes and smells coming from the site. These sites, including the one in Western Environmental, are located on geological areas with high water table, which include the south and north portion of Mecca, creating a potential for severe contamination to the agricultural irrigation systems. Soils and percolations reports in the vicinity shows a water table ranging from 5 to 15 feet, sometimes lower than that. Therefore, I would like to request the immediate closure and cleanup of Western Environmental Facility, Lawson dump site, and Mount San Diego. Work with federal agencies to close the Western Environmental site and other unpermitted sites that have caused environmental health problems to our communities. In the future, introduce new, stricter legislation in the compact agreements, requiring a permitting process to determine the feasibility of these sites on high water table areas, and compliance with local land use designation and zoning to avoid the installation of these facilities in proximity with residential areas, schools, and community parks. We thank you in advance for your support and assure you that the Eastern Coachella Valley Environmental Justice Coalition will continue working towards addressing these issues at the state, local, and federal levels to protect the health and prosperity for our communities. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Please, and Mr. Carranza, if you have a written statement, and that goes for any of the panelists that you have, please leave it with us, and that will be incorporate it as part of the record if we don't get through everything that you have.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask one specific question to Mr. Sergio Carranza. I'm under the impression, Sergio, that the Lawson dump site and Mount San Diego are no longer receiving any waste.
That is correct.
And so, if they're not receiving waste, what is it that you would want to do with those sites?
There are still some activities going on the sites in terms of there has not been any studies. There has been no analysis like we're trying to do right now with the Western Environmental. No analysis were conducted. There's still fumes coming up out of dump site of Lawson. There is some activity going on also at Mount San Diego. There have been some studies in the past, which is what the reason why the site was closed, from a potential percolation of nitrates to the ground table. Those have been never followed up. And these are the replica, they have the reflection of what could happen if we don't start acting as you eloquently proposed in this forum, to start developing a set of action plans to follow up on the potential contamination of those sites that we have been ignoring for almost a decade on those particular sites.
I can appreciate that. Is anyone here from DTSC or Cali EPA, or did they leave?
They're still here.
What are your thoughts on that? On the sites, the Lawson site, Mount San Diego, can we also conduct the studies there that are necessary? Sure, please. Please come to the mic.
So it's my understanding, and I don't have a lot of information on this,
Sure.
but that the Lawson site is on Indian land again. So again, we're getting to that jurisdictional issue. And I don't know the history of the Lawson site I know it's in court. I know there was a court battle of it. So I don't have a lot of specifics to say, but I can tell the committee that I can get back to you on that to see if DTSC has any opportunity to do similar investigative work on those sites. I don't know the answer.
Madam Director, I really appreciate that. Can that be done within a certain timeline?
Certainly the question to the legal team of what is our opportunity can be done very quickly, yes.
I can appreciate that. We definitely need to do something about that.
Yep.
I remember going out there not too long ago providing health care as a community health care worker, and seeing that there where you had kids running around and you had families having to deal with that and see it. And so whatever we can do as quickly as possible, that would be great.
Yep.
And we'll be asking that formally through a letter as well.
Great. I will find out that for you. Thank you. Because I, too, was out there today, and it's pretty dramatic, the Lawson site. Anyway.
Well, thank you. As far as policy is concerned, Mr. Carranza, I think you're right on, and I would love to work with Mr. Wajkowski on some policy in the near future dealing with this issue. It might be something that perhaps we'd have to work with the federal government as well, but I think it's something that we can try to work on here with our locals to get to some resolve so that this never happens again.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Ms. Gamaz. Señora.
Mi nombre es Margarita Gámez y soy residente de la comunidad de Oises. Yo he vivido en mi parque en Casa Móviles, que está ubicado entre la avenida 69 y calle Pir, desde hace 20 años. Yo participo en diferentes comités comunitarios que tienen finalidad mejorar las condiciones ambientales y de vivienda en nuestra comunidad. Estos comités incluyen Comité de Justicia Social, que ha luchado para mejorar los parqueaderos Polancos, Cooperativa del Desierto, que ha ayudado a rehabilitar parqueaderos, Comité de Fracturas de la calle Pir, que trabajan para traer el drenaje y el agua potable. Hace como 10 años fui testiga de cómo se formó el basurero Larson, ubicado frente a nuestras viviendas y al lado del parqueadero Duros. Nosotros sabemos que ese lugar es tierra indígena. Muchas constructoras empezaron a llevar todo tipo de basura, desde concreto, suelos contaminados, desechos químicos y otro tipo de materiales que se han convertido en una amenaza para la salud de nuestra comunidad. Aunque el basurero fue cerrado por orden federal, los malos olores todavía persisten temprano, por la mañana y por la noche. El mal olor ha creado ardor en la nariz que muestra cómo el viento puede llevar contaminantes en toda nuestra área. Nosotros, en condiciones de campesinos, estamos siendo víctimas de constructoras y otro tipo de compañías sin escrúpulos que no les importa el bienestar y la salud de nuestras comunidades. Nosotros estamos a la merced de dignatarios políticos para que establezcan leyes que nos protejan de este tipo de abuso. Por lo tanto, con todos mis derechos de ciudadana y la fuerza de mi corazón, les exijo que limpien el basurero que está al lado de Duros, Monte San Diego, y cierren y limpien Western environmental de nuestras comunidades. También que aboguen y empiecen a buscar soluciones para proteger la salud de nuestros niños y que haya leyes para que se eviten futuras amenazas ambientales. Muchas gracias por venir a escuchar nuestras preocupaciones.
Gracias a usted, señora.
Thank you. This panel is excused. We'll move to our next segment. I'll ask Director Almedo, Community Worker Cristina Mendez, Associate Director of Promotores, Eduardo Guevara, and Maria Machucha, a member of the Mecca Community Council, to come up on to the panel. This is going to be a segment on government accountability and Western Environmental Industries community relations. Again, just a reminder, if you have written statements want to be part of the record, obviously make sure that we get that. It will. Director Almedo.
Thank you, Chair, distinguished members of this committee. My name is Luis Olmedo, and I'm the Executive Director of Comité Cívico del Valle, a community-based organization working on environmental justice issues, Piro County, Coachella, and throughout the state of California. What I bring here is express views of a number of organizations. So esteemed Chair and members of the Assembly, Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee, we the undersigned environmental justice organizations represent communities of the Eastern Coachella Valley, including Mecca and other environmental justice communities throughout the state of California. We and our communities have joined in solidarity to express our support for the immediate remediation and eradication of one of the worst environmental contamination cases to ever be exposed in California, if not in the United States. The toxic catastrophe is Western Environmental Industries. The Western Environmental case falls under the purview of this committee for many reasons. Despite that, the toxins and operations themselves sit on tribal land. In this case, the state of California failed to enforce required safeguards and follow traditional permitting processes that would have prevented what is now an uninterrupted operation of an unpermitted toxic waste dump situated adjacent to the community of Mecca on the tribal land of the Cabezon Band of Mission Indians. As a result, the unincorporated farm working community of Mecca has been negligently subjected to the toxic impacts of this plant, over which they have no control, about which they have no input in the first place. Indeed, the Western environmental disaster would not have occurred in proximity to wealthy white communities. If the installation of such dump was proposed, it would have been squashed at the outset due to the valid concerns about public health and quality of life impacts. If by some miracle the site would have been installed in a wealthier white community, we believe that the enforcement officials, site cleanup agents, criminal investigators would have flooded the site until every last grain of hazardous materials would have been recovered and placed in a state-permitted and properly engineered hazardous waste dump. State, federal, environmental, and public health safeguards are meant to protect all United States citizens regardless of color, race, origin, economic status, or education. It is our understanding that the Federal Clean Air Act, Water Act, and other similar acts do not give immunity to anyone and are not limited in power by jurisdiction boundaries. Thus, sovereign and indigenous nations are no more or no less subject to enforcement by government agencies than any other entity. In other words, state and federal agencies are fully empowered to enforce these laws, even in tribal lands, for that purpose of protecting human health and safety, as well as the well-being of its environment itself. No exceptions or adjustments should ever be made based on the on the relative power or other characteristics of the communities affected. We expect the same protection of all communities everywhere. The juxtaposition of the tribal and non-tribal communities resulting conflicts regarding land use are not uncommon. Historically, we have seen tribes, and I repeat, historically, we have seen tribes fall victim from time to time of the predatory tactics of hazardous waste industries under the guise of green business, where proper permitting, environmental impact study requirements, and enforcement are either less stringent or not required. These actions are frequently purposeful and taken with a full understanding of the off-site consequences. We believe that this is true in the case of Western Environmental, as well as recent scientific investigations and enforcement has demonstrated that the multiplicity of hazardous toxins Western Environmental has put into the ground, air, and which are feared be percolating down into the water, not as green as people were led to believe. Western Environmental is a hazardous waste dump and not only operating illegally by accepting waste without oversight of state California, but further did so with encouragement of financing California taxpayers' dollars. There's no question the generators front, and just to clear that, is we believe they're state agencies. Had they enforced, then that's the relationship I'm trying to make with California tax dollars. This will not have happened. What has not been clear is why the unpermitted site was allowed to continue to accept hazardous waste even after the state became aware of the operation. Indeed, thousands of shipments entered the site after that point. Moreover, we understand that one or more state water board finance cleanups whose waste was negligently directed to the unpermitted facility. We don't yet know whether the state's complicity in creating this catastrophe resulted from misconduct, negligence, or, as DTSC Deputy Director stated, miscommunication. Nonetheless, there is certainly a significant element of state responsibility in creating Western Environmental catastrophe, and we expect significant state action to remediate it. We, the undersigned, ask that the full internal and external investigation of the implicated state agencies to assess the extent of the failures, negligence, or possible misconduct contributing to the issue. We believe the agency's failure to remedy the problem of this magnitude, despite their mandatory duties to do so, and knowledge of consequences, constitutes participation in the creation and maintenance of the problem itself. We also ask that any wrongdoing be prosecuted to the full extent of the law to demonstrate that this type of egregious mistake, which has sickened, otherwise affected scores of innocent children and families, will never be tolerated again or go unpunished. We additionally ask the committee to use its authority, legislative power, influence, and demand the following: an investigation, both internal and external, to calculate and define the extent of the negligence of the state of California. And I thank the new director, Debbie Raphael, for stepping up to the plate and asking for that same request. The closure of the Western Environmental site and diversion of toxic shipments to a properly permitted site. The legislative action will hold corporations accountable for deliberately illegal operations on tribal land, allow conscientious and thorough environmental and public health assessments processes for affected non-tribal communities prior to constructions of hazardous facilities on tribal land, and the immediate and accessible public disclosure of all companies and entities that transported waste or other substances for the disposal at this site. So we appreciate your respectful attention and to this urgent disaster and your conscientious actions in repairing it for the benefit of thousands of Eastern Coachella Valley residents and for the millions who live in other environmental justice communities, not only in California, but also nationwide. And this is signed by, obviously, myself, Executive Director of Latino Environmental Advancement Project, Just Transition Alliance, Imperial Valley Residents for Environmental Justice, Promotores Comunitarios del Desierto, Sealy Citizens United, Institute of Socioeconomic Justice, Clínicas de Salud del Pueblo, San Joaquin Valley MAPA, which we all, and I won't read this letter, but I will submit it for the record, but actually the local union, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, who represents more than 2,500 members, also in a similar message wanted to weigh in, and so I'll submit that as well for the
Thank you.
record.
And those will all become part of our
Thank you for
record.
your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wikowski and Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee. Welcome to the Eastern Coachella Valley, and thank you for taking the time to hear our community's concerns. The afternoon of March 23rd, 2011, I was asked to go take pictures and document the sites that we had visited in the Environmental Justice Bus Tour earlier in the month. The purpose was to take pictures and take notes of the sites visited to document the progress, if any, had been made since the tour. When I arrived to the Western Environmental site, I pulled over at the same location where the bus had parked during our tour days before. I started taking pictures of the piles of dirt, the Western Environmental sign, the surroundings, when an employee came from behind the gate and started taking pictures of me and my vehicle. Not knowing what that was all about, I decided to get in my car and leave. Right before I arrived to the stop sign on Gene Wilmus and 62nd, a man in a red car blocked the way with his vehicle and parked diagonally, not allowing me to leave. He got off his car, he went to my vehicle's window and requested that I give him my camera. He said I was trespassing private property. I refused to give him the camera, told him I did not know that road was private property, and he asked me to erase the pictures I had taken of the site. This man started to tell me that Western Environmental was not doing anything wrong and that they had all the necessary permits to operate their business. The man works for Western Environmental, and he asked me for my name, company, and information. I was very scared at that point because his employee was taking pictures all around my car, and the man was right next to my window. I called an attorney I work for and asked her what to do. She told me to write her name and number on a piece of paper, and I gave it to him through the window. I told him I would not give him my equipment, pictures, or anything else. And still feeling that he was being too invasive because he was still blocking my way with his car, and his staff member was next to mine also, I took my camera and started to take pictures of him. That's when he proceeded to get in his vehicle and left me alone. I would like to state on the record that when we have gone in several different bus tours with members of the media, elected officials, and agency leaders, we never saw this man or any other employee of Western Environmental. In any of those previous visits, they never attempted to clarify with a written sign or otherwise that the road that Western Environmental is on private property. Western Environmental staff has never brought vehicles or camera crews to photograph Mr. Wallerstein from the Air Quality Management District or Mr. Douglas McDaniel from the US EPA or anyone else. He has, however, used intimidating tactics against me when I drove my vehicle alone and tried to do my job in the community representing members of the Eastern Coachella Valley. They've also used their harassment tactics against other leaders in the community who questioned their operation. Western Environmental has launched their campaign where they are claiming to be victims. This is not new. The same was done by the perpetrators that caused the toxic problems in Kettleman City and in Lanier in the Central Valley. They have also engaged in conversation with a small group of community members who don't have the technical skills to question them. They will claim they've reached out to us. We at CRLA, however, have not heard from them. Our community does not have reason to believe that Western Environmental can be trusted. They hide behind the Cabazon Band of Mission Indians' sovereignty. They've also come into our community, caused panic, nuisance, and a health hazard to our hardworking families after they were shut down in other communities. Our community does not want an entity such as this one to exist in our vicinity or to take their dump onto anybody else. We ask that you assist us in making sure that the necessary regulations be set in place so that this does not exist here or in anybody else's community. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you.
Associate Director Guevara.
Okay. Good afternoon, honorable panel members. My name is Eduardo Guevara. I am a Meca resident and member of Promotores Comunitarios del Desierto. And I am here today to address a situation that might not have been considered by you and that we think that needs to be addressed. That situation is the lack of respect from authorities toward our community and to the whole East Coachella Valley. Agencies have declared that the source of odors Meca has been experiencing is Western Environmental, that Western Environmental have been illegally operating without a state permit for 7 years, and that even government agencies have contributed to the stories high pile of toxic waste less than 3 miles away from our schools, daycares, and living quarters in the area. How is it possible that the authorities first try to deny the fact and then they try to sell us the story that everything was under federal limits and that no danger was imminent to the residents? How can someone admit that there are toxics in the air and at the same time tell us that everything is fine? The panel present in the April 28 meeting in Saul Martinez did not like the questioning from the community, but the community also did not like the story of everything is good. That was very clear for both sides. We all deserve respect, and if we were demanding answers and actions, it is only because we all want a normal life, or as close to normal as possible. We already have other problems on top of us, and we don't need to add disrespect from our authorities to the long list. We deserve a normal life for our children as much as we deserve respect from our authorities. I would really like that in the scope of your faculties, do something to prevent this kind of situation from happening again, not only here, but in all the Mecas that we may have in the state and all over the country. Please address the problems with respect to the affected community. It is the least they deserve after enduring situations like the one the East Coachella Valley has been suffering for years. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for your contribution on the accountability and the community relations, and we obviously think that that's an important part of this equation. So as we go forward with the cooperative agreement and this permitting, we'll make sure that you folks receive the information and you know what's going on. I appreciate the comments that you've made, and they will be part of the record. And thank you very much. Do you have questions?
Just want to say thank you as well for your testimony. Definitely wrote down your points in which I feel we can take some actions. And at the end of the hearing, I'll break down all the actions that I think we need to take on. But thank you for your testimony.
Very good. Next, we're going to... Our third panel on community response is going to be looking at the learning environment. So we have, and the impact that toxics have had. So we'll have Daryl Adams, who's the superintendent of this fine school that we're in right now. Stephen Hendy is scientist. Nadia Rojo, a parent with Migrant Head Start, and Delia Alvarez, who's the principal at Saul Martinez Elementary School. I appreciate educators taking time to come here because the impact on our young children is yet another important element of this very complex problem that we're finding out today. So, Superintendent Adams, if you'd proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming to our school district. Welcome, and to you and Assembly Member Perez, who is from our area, and this is his backyard. We appreciate him coming out. And also members of the audience, thank you as well for being here today. On behalf of the entire Coachella Valley Unified School District and the Board of Trustees, we would like to thank you, the committee, for taking these steps and focusing your attention on this matter. Western Environmental and Western Reduction Technology Plant have been the source of this problem for the Meca community, for Saul Martinez Elementary School, for our students and their families, and for our staff. Your attention and subsequent actions today, along with Cal EPA, AQMD, US EPA, Senator Boxer's office, and other agencies have encouraged our school community because we see that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Chairman Roosevelt I've seen come a long way from that first meeting we had, and appears to be conciliatory toward helping to solve this problem. We look forward to working with him and all the other agencies to solve it as well. As you know, since last December, when these odors began and the surrounding neighborhoods were forced to tolerate these smells, the disruption to school operations have been profound. Our students could not go out and play during recess. They could not focus and study appropriately. Our teachers were concerned and experiencing headaches as well. School bus drivers sometimes vomiting as they were taking students home. Students seeking and staff seeking medical attention. And this is had a great cost to their families, to ourselves, to the school district. We've hired our own consultant to research this matter to the tune of almost $20,000. We've lost a lot of money as far as our staff, labor costs, medical costs. Some of our parents not able to afford these costs I've encouraged them to bring us the bill. We want to help. We want to help solve this problem. The only way to do it, though, is to do it together. And that's one of our mottos. Together we build a future. And together we solve this problem. Together we reach out to the tribal chairman. We'll reach out to Western Environmental, but they need to come to the table with us as well. They've had meetings before, and we have not been included. We've asked for timelines, as the assembly member has asked for today and has gotten. We've asked for that before, and we are happy to see that happen today. But we want to be at the table because these are our students, these are our families, these are our staff members, and we want to be a part of the solution. But we will not go quietly in the night until the problem is solved. We appreciate you being here today and know that we're in this with you 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Stephen Hendy, you're a scientist with the CV Union School District.
Okay, again, good afternoon. I'm Steve Hendy. I'm a senior industrial hygienist. I work for the County of Riverside Public Health Department, Office of Industrial Hygiene, and have been doing this for almost a couple decades. I conduct and I supervise a staff that's involved with specialized studies, surveys, inspections, and investigations involving recognition, evaluation, and control of chemical, physical, and physiological stress in occupational and community environments. So I do a broad range of I have specialties. Coachella Valley Unified School District, as been already expressed, showed great concern in having this study done. And we went even beyond what AQMD has done. 2 schools were selected, Mecca and Saul Martinez Elementary School. They were done on 2 separate days in April. One day the wind was blowing southwest, the other day northwest, which was perfect to do a comparison, which, as you're aware of now, goes over Western Environmental. I did over 100 chemicals to see what was in the air based on what was already expressed by AQM and EPA, meaning the contaminated soil having hydrocarbons and other potential pesticides that were involved. So out of those, I did VOCs, which stands for volatile organic compounds, hydrocarbons, sulfur compounds, and metals, and which I found to be all below, and these was done for 8 hours because that's the time that staff and students are in at school, and also it's a well-established standard for 8 hours, what is called a time-weighted average. All the levels were below the permissible exposure limits for Cal OSHA. Now, not to say there wasn't anything. They also wanted even broader than that. I also sampled water, and if you're familiar with Title 22, it's a very extensive amount of analytical approach to the water properties. No levels were found to be above the Title 22 except for sodium. Now, I did find arsenic, which has been brought up in a tour we took, at 4.4 parts per billion, but the EPA level is 10 parts per billion. So though it was there, it was below the the standard. But still, so just let you know that both water fountains have the same, again, levels. In addition to that, I also took samples that analyzed mold and other particulates in the air, inside and outside, and also took dust samples for hydrocarbons. None were detected. And of the mold that was done, very typical for inside and outside, because we were concerned with the agricultural waste that was in the air. Talk had been mentioned of aspergillus, which, again, was found at very normal levels. Now, I want to emphasize that the levels that I did find that weren't below the level of detection were 100 to 1,000 times below the permissible exposure limit. So in other words, they're way, way down below the permissible exposure limit, which, again, is set to protect a worker at an 8-hour shift. Now, I like to use an example of what toxic is, because we've been hearing this word thrown a lot. Any element you can think of can be considered toxic at high enough level. An example would be water. We think usually that's a benign substance. However, if I was to consume, or any person was to consume a large enough amount quick enough, the biochemistry in a person's body would be thrown so off that death would result in that. The same thing with medicines. They're, in essence, sometimes poison that we give ourselves, but they help us with a particular symptom that we might have. Now, large enough amounts, they can poison us, or they can kill us. But at small enough amounts, say if you had, I'll give you an example of Tylenol, in which maybe instead of using the full pill, you cut it to 1/10 or 10% of it, and then reduced another 10%, it would have no effect to the body at all. You have no benefit from that. And the same thing with these elements that I have described or haven't mentioned before. Now, that's not to say the nuisance odor is not a problem. It is. It can produce illness, and has been well documented that can produce illnesses that have been described thus far and should be addressed and still considered. But as far as poison that you would get from toxic effect, the 2 days that I did do, I found no such thing. And also, for those who would be interested, the full report, which is over 100 pages, is available at the old district. Thank you.
Dr. Hindi, if you could make a copy of the report available for the committee so we can review that as well as your remarks. I guess my question is the OSHA standard an appropriate standard for school children, since we're looking at adults in an 8-hour workday versus a child?
Perhaps not the best, but that's the best we have. Because you're right, that is for an adult, for teachers, for adults. But it's a good starting point, and especially with the levels being 100 to 1,000. Usually you use a safety factor of 10, sometimes to do an action level, other stuff. When you can achieve 100 or 1,000 like that was being achieved, I think it can be assumed that it's safe for even a child.
And on the odor issue, are children more sensitive to the odor? Would they have a different reaction, or would an elderly person have a different reaction to a healthy 40-year-old worker?
Good question.
In an 8-hour period.
Good question. Everybody's different. I had a grandmother who was 100 years old. She couldn't smell anything, which is good and bad. But there are some people who have high sensitivity. Children, probably they're maybe a little bit more than adults, but still some adults that have high sensitivity. And when you add on like diabetes or other health problems, that can make a person more susceptible to a nuisance and a problem. So that's why it's so difficult to say that this odor is going to affect everybody the same way, because we're so different physiologically, and in our environments.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Principal Alvarez, thank you for joining us. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. I am the principal of Saul Martinez Elementary School, and I'm here today to talk about how the odor problems in Mecca have been negatively affecting the children at our school. I acknowledge the fact that efforts have been made to mitigate these odors, but I also want to make sure no one forgets there is still a problem and that everyone understands progress must continue. Our students already face many challenges. Almost all of them come from low socioeconomics and our English language learners. They don't deserve the additional burden of poor air quality. Despite these challenges, they had made tremendous progress in all areas. However, when the odors were at their worst, every aspect of the school life was affected, including attendance and student achievement. Our students were not coming to school because their parents were afraid of the quality of air, and when the odor was bad, it became impossible for students to concentrate. Again, although there has been progress, my fear is that once the spotlight moves away, the problems will begin again. During this school year, my focus should have been the instructional leadership of my teachers and students. Instead, too much of my time was spent dealing with lockdowns, local fires, police agencies, media, government agencies, collecting air samples, and odor logs. Staff and students were directed to report the odor logs to the school office. AQMD may have 90 complaint calls, but in reality, there were a number of individuals complaining and affected each and every time a call was made. The students and residents of the Mecca community and Saul Martinez community, as well as our staff, deserve the same decent air quality that everyone else in other areas of the Coachella Valley enjoy on a daily basis. Thank you for your concerns.
Could you share with me from your personal experience? I mean, I have the report from AQMD. You were there at the school. You know, not every child is going to give you a written report of odor. Can you? It seems like in March and April you've got 31 complaints, 14 complaints. Was it a constant odoriferous situation, or was it some days?
You're absolutely right. In the beginning, I would say, since the December 15th incident, and in December there was actually two incidents. We had one on December 11th, which was a Saturday. We had a Migrant Saturday Academy being hosted at my school site. There was one major incident, and then when we came back to school on that following Monday, the smell was very intensive. On December 15th, that's when it got to the point where right after lunch, which the children had been outside playing, I had numerous calls from classroom teachers letting me know that there were students in the classroom that were feeling headaches, nauseousness, and vomiting. And I also had staff members, like my yard supervisors, who were outside, feeling very ill. And that's when I made the decision to call 911. And the community and the Coachella Valley became aware of the situation. We went on winter break. We thought that at this time, things would get better. The smell would go away, because at this time, no one knew where the odor was coming from. When we returned back in January, the odor continued. It wasn't on a daily basis, but it was intensive, especially during the mornings. And different individuals are very sensitive to it. And for that reason, many individuals, like I stated, students were not attending school, were constantly in the office. We began to have health logs reporting all the headaches, the stomach aches, the nauseousness, not really knowing if this was a cause or there was something else causing the situation. But nonetheless, it depended on the time of day, it depended on the wind direction, along with the temperature and numerous other aspects. I even went out personally and purchased a weather kit at Walmart. Because when I was calling in originally the odor, they would tell me, well, what time of day was it? Where was the wind direction? All these information that I did not have, nor was I an expert. So therefore, I had to go out and purchase one. We installed it on the ceiling, on the roof of the school, and then my secretary has a panel there that reports all that information. So we began to have more accurate records. I would say after April, it did slow down. It did slow down the odor complaints, but nonetheless, it's still a problem. I have residents, community members that let me know that in the weekends, the odor is very intense, also in the evenings. And that is usually why when my employees would start arriving at school at 7 o'clock in the morning, they would complain about the odor. And usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, it dissipated.
Very good. Next, we have Ms. Nadia Rojo from Migrant Head Start. Thank you for joining us.
Buenas tardes, señor presidente BAP, miembros del Comité Comunidad del Valle de Coachella. Mi nombre es Nidia Rojo y soy una madre que tengo a mi hijo en el programa Migrant Head Start y vine a dar mi testimonio en cuanto a los malos olores debido a que es algo que me preocupa como madre, ya que vivo aproximadamente como una milla donde provienen estos malos olores y me he dado cuenta que me estoy viendo afectada tanto yo como mi familia. Mi hijo bajó en su rendimiento porque hubo días que dejó de asistir a la escuelita porque le ardían mucho sus ojos y otros días andaba muy débil o cabizbajo en su ánimo. Además tengo miedo en ocasiones salir con mis niños por la tarde a jugar y a caminar porque es tan fuerte el olor que a veces duele la cabeza y provoca náuseas. Y estos olores son malos para los niños, mujeres, embarazadas y familias, y esto también puede traer consecuencias. No es posible que estas compañías que hacen tanto mal les permitan estar cerca de comunidades donde vivimos, ya que nosotros las personas merecemos el respeto y la certeza de vivir con dignidad, ya que como seres humanos se nos está pisoteando. Además, estas compañías no deben existir cerca de las comunidades. No existe transparencia por parte de estas compañías con la comunidad. Se necesita hacer una regulación que no permita que estas compañías irrespetuosas de la salud de los seres humanos se instalen y operen cerca de familias que pueden salir afectadas, como lo estamos viendo ahora en mi comunidad de Meca, California. Así que me gustaría pedir que tomen cartas en el asunto para arreglar este problema. No sé si pudieran dar filtros purificadores de aire para las escuelas, ya que eso prometieron hacer en la escuelita donde tengo a mi hijo, pero nunca sucedió. Además, me gustaría saber de dónde provienen estos olores y lo que está causando y si se está sancionando a estas personas o fábricas que son la causa de los olores que no los sigan provocando. Así, todos estaremos tranquilos porque ya no podemos ejercer nuestras actividades que hacíamos anteriormente al aire libre. Sin más que comentar, le doy las gracias por estar aquí y escuchar nuestras inquietudes en cuanto a este problema de los malos olores. Y espero que les dé la atención por el bien de los niños, ancianos y familias de Meca, California. Gracias.
Mr. Chair, may I? I'm worrying around the issue of our students. How many students would you say missed school? And how much was lost in ADA funding as a result of them missing school?
I would have, Assembly member, I would have to check with my finance office. I think the amount may be below about $10,000, but you know, I will make sure I get you those exact numbers for your records.
How many would you estimate, Ms. Alvarez, would you say students missed school? You have a rough estimate as to how many students perhaps?
I would say it averaged about maybe 100 students during the time that it was very intense. I do have a school of over 1,100 students just at Saul Martinez.
Would you say that this occurred mostly in the month of December, or up until which month would you say that we had students missing school as a result of the stench?
I would say that there were trends, not in December, because that was when we first became aware of the situation, but possibly in March and part of April.
I would definitely, I'm going to ask that our superintendent obviously work with our principal to identify how many students missed school, and as well what that cost us in ADA funding, because I'd like to see what I can do on that specific issue as well.
Yes, thank you. We will do that, sir.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Now we'll move on to community health and the toxic impact that has occurred in community health. At this time, I'd like to ask Shannon Tencher, who's a teacher, as well as Kendra Baxter at Saul Martinez Elementary School, Jacqueline Boulay, who's a parent at the elementary school, and Claudia Figueroa of Laderas para un Meca Limpio. Ladies, thank you for coming.
Excuse me.
Oh, sir.
Dr. Gibbs, I happen to be the Associate Medical Director at the clinic in Mecca.
Uh-huh.
I don't have a seat up here, but I just make a short comment. Really what we need, we need the report of the conclusion of the studies and identify which toxins are out there. And then with that report, we can go ahead and be more aggressive as far as investigating the clinical situations that arise in clinic. We've got 3 clinics. We've got one in Mecca, we've got one in Coachella, and we've got another one in Salt Lake City, West Shores.
Our next panel, sir, is the quality of life, and I'll have you come on.
I'm the representative of Clinicas de Salud de Puebla.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Yeah, there's a seat there for you, sir. Appreciate your testimony, please.
I see. It's this guy. Sorry.
And actually, he's first on the list. So.
Yeah. What was?
Okay.
Right. I got some bad information that you were not here. Okay. Go ahead. Proceed.
Yeah.
You started. And we'll...
Dr. Gibbs, I'm a family practitioner at the clinic in Mecca and happen to be the Associate Medical Director at 3 clinics, including Mecca, Coachella, and West Shores.
I'm sorry, your name again, doctor?
Excuse me?
Your
Gibbs.
name?
Gibbs.
Gibbs.
G-I-B-B-S.
Thank you, sir.
Medical doctor, family practice. I've been working at the medical clinic in Mecca for about 2 years now and enjoy it very much. Enjoy serving the people of Mecca, Coachella, Thermal, entire area. What we need is we have 3 family doctors and we have 2 nurse practitioners there in the clinic. And really what we need to do is if we can identify a certain pathogen or toxin out there in the environment, identify it, give it to me, we'll take care of business. Up to now, I don't think we've identified which toxin that is. I know where there's been some arsenic discovered in some of the trailer parks and the wells without the filters. We're aware of the signs and symptoms of that situation. If we can identify other toxins out there, we'll do our research and we'll take care of it as far as the health and well-being of the citizens of Mecca.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Gibbs. And if we can get your contact information, we'll make sure that Dr. Hindy's report makes its way to you, and as information is available.
Sure. A quick question, doctor. How many students or families did you see during the course of this from December up until now as a result of the scent, the smell? Yeah. Would you estimate?
It's really hard to say. You know, air pollutants, they're triggers for exacerbating emphysema, COPD, and asthma. So it's hard to tell if the local environment really was the trigger or not. And the same thing with gastrointestinal symptoms. We don't know if it's a virus or due to some other element. So, identifying heavy metals, for example, arsenic is a big help. So if we can identify the exact toxin, it'll help the 5 providers there to recognize what's going on.
I guess I'm worrying. I mean, I hear your point, but I guess I'm worrying when students showed up to the clinic or family members showed up to the clinic, did anyone state out loud to you right then and there, I'm here because of the odor that I smelled and that got me sick? And if we can quantify that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. I don't specifically recall any subjective complaints as such. The orders in the community caused me to come in today. What we see on our end, I can't breathe, I'm wheezing, and we go ahead and take care of that problem. So it's hard to identify the exact trigger.
good. Now, Shannon Tencher, who's a teacher at Saul Martinez. Shannon, thank you for coming. Or Ms. Tencher, excuse me.
Thank you for having me here. Is it on? Okay. Thank you for having me here. I have felt like a lone member for so long, and I'm so thankful that this problem has not been dropped, that we're going to continue to make progress on it for the children. I was there the first day, December 11th, when the fumes came. I was teaching the summer program, the Saturday program. We thought it was a gas leak. It was so overwhelming. The minute we walked out of the classroom, and I had 12 students with me, we were all overcome with the fumes. We all felt heavy chests. I'm speaking for myself and the children. I started wheezing. I started coughing. I started getting dry heaves. The paramedics were called. The people in charge of the school at that time had us come all out of the buildings and stay outside, which really was the worst thing possible because we were getting all the fumes. But again, we didn't know. So that was December 11th. I went back to school December 13th. The fumes came again. And then we found out, to the great action of my principal, that the fumes were coming through the vents. So she had the smartness to have everyone close their vents. But still, I went home. I was there December 15th when I opened my door for release, and it looked like I was in San Francisco fog. That's how heavy and thick the odor was and the smell. Totally overcome by the fumes. I went to the office, and deliriously, I drove myself to Eisenhower Hospital. Don't ask me why, I just did. I was out of school rest of the week. I was home in bed sick. I saw 2 doctors during that time, which were ridiculous. One said it was my heart. Another one said it was my diabetes. I knew I'd been poisoned, but I couldn't prove it yet. So I stayed home, stayed in bed for those 2 weeks, then went back to school January 4th. I opened my car door, and I smelled it. And after being away from school for 2 weeks, I just started crying. The smell was there again. I couldn't believe it. I went and talked to my principal, sent home again. I didn't return to school that whole week. And on January 6th, there was another big problem where a lot of teachers were sick. The ambulance were called. The air was really bad. So I went back to school January 11th, and we came up with this odor log, which is wonderful. I filled it out twice that week. The next week was okay, but then on January 24th, we had a problem almost every single day that week. Well, I remember it, too. It was my birthday. And I know how I spent my birthday this year. It was in bed. You go to school, you teach, you're so overwhelmed by the fumes, you're exhausted, you have a headache, you have a stomach ache, your face is breaking out, your eyes are getting crusties all over it. It's horrible. So that whole week, we filled out odor logs. The next week, I had between 10 and 12 kids absent every day. I teach kindergarten, 25 students, and I've documented this. And every parent I talked to said, well, they have chest pain. They're throwing up. They have a respiratory infection, over and over again. And I would say to the parents, do you think it's the fumes? And they would say yes. But I'm told over and over again that the culture that these people have grown up in will not complain about it, will not point fingers, and a lot of them have gone silent with all their ailments. Now, I've gone to an independent doctor. I had a QME exam, it's called done. They have found toxins in my blood, but they said it was so minute that there shouldn't be any cause for concern. I have been labeled as being, let me get it correct here, exposed to environmental toxin, and this has forever changed my life. I don't have the energy I used to have. I do have a heightened response to smell now. Don't ask me to clean up the dog stuff outside. My skin has been affected. My doctor's still trying to figure that out. My eyes get white crusties over, as do a lot of teachers. We've all been walking around with red, bloodshot eyes, and we wonder why. But I can only speak for myself, and my body has reacted to this. I'm not the same person I was before this, and I have lost something, and so has my family. As a teacher, I'm very sad to watch the students and fellow teachers at Saul Martinez experience the same symptoms that I have. Children with headaches, stomach aches, feeling dizzy, chest pains, and a lot of heads on the tables when the exposure is at its peak. I witnessed teachers with chest pains, headaches, vomiting, dizziness, and many other side effects. One thing I'm glad about hearing tonight, kind of, is several of you mentioned the fear. I heard Director Raphael mention fear. I've heard some of you mention fear. So I've been having a lot of anxiety and fear. I've been talking to Mrs. Alvarez, saying, should I stay next year? Should I not? Because I have the anxiety about getting exposed again. So I finally went to my own doctor this week, and he says to me, you have post-traumatic stress disorder. I said, I have what? I couldn't have post-traumatic stress disorder. My niece has that. My niece just came back from Afghanistan, and she has that. When he read all the symptoms to me, guess what? I have post-traumatic stress disorder. How'd this happen? It was the fumes. Did I have this prior to December? No. Do I have it now? Yes. What I'm asking for is, and I don't know if this will ever happen, but accountability. How can we trust Western Environmental or any other company that is so close to school to say, okay, we won't do this anymore, and then everyone walks away, and unfortunately, it usually is business as usual. I'm asking today for the committee to set up some kind of safeguards, some kind of monitoring, some kind of accountability that I can go back to the school I love and teach the children I love without any fear and anxiety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kendra Baxter, another teacher. Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Kendra Baxter, and I've been a teacher at Saul Martinez Elementary for the past 7 years. First, I would like to acknowledge that some progress has been made, but I am still concerned about what's in the air, things that we don't see and we don't smell, and what will happen when the focus shifts from Mecca onto some other area. I worry that all of this will just come back. Therefore, I would like to address the effect these issues have had on the students at Saul Martinez Elementary School. Beyond the health effects, the strong odors have affected the students in a myriad of other ways. For instance, when there are strong odors drifting over the campus, the school is placed on lockdown. This means that students are not allowed out of the classroom. As soon as students hear the word lockdown, their focus immediately shifts from academics to worry, as we, their teachers, are not able to adequately alleviate their fears. The students recognize platitudes, and they see we don't really know if the air is safe or if being inside is enough protection. Additionally, when there are odor problems on campus, the students lose their recess time, which we as adults, we might not understand the importance of. However, to a child, this is one of the most important times of the day. And I wonder how effective all of us would be at our jobs if we were told there were not going to be any breaks that day. And I'd like to tell you a personal story of what happened on campus. As recently as spring break, I arranged an Easter egg hunt for my students. The eggs are hidden on the playground. However, in the middle of the hunt, there was a harsh chemical smell drifting over the campus that was so strong, the students immediately pulled their shirts up over their noses and their mouths. And the fun activity became a hurried rush as we had to go back to the classroom in an attempt to escape the odor. Instead of having fun, the students were worried, scared, and writing letters. Because I am a 6th grade teacher, I don't teach the little kids. I teach the kids who are old enough to know there's something wrong and why aren't we doing anything about it. At Saul Martinez, we have amazing students who work hard every day to succeed academically. The majority of our students have the challenge of learning a new language while still being expected to produce high test scores. Any distraction, such as a foul odor, does nothing but hinder our students' progress and achievement. Each and every student at Saul Martinez Elementary has the right to an education, free from the worry and stress of what might be polluting their air. My hope is that through actions such as these today, we can make changes to the laws that are allowing these types of situations to develop. I completely understand the importance of tribal sovereignty, but the tribe must understand that with sovereignty comes a responsibility of being good neighbors to the communities surrounding tribal land. I'm asking that either the tribes begin asking businesses who lease their land to adhere to the strict guidelines set forth by the state of California, or that the laws be changed to demand that tribes follow California's environmental laws. Additionally, I would ask that the facilities such as these not be allowed to operate within a certain distance of schools and communities. In the end, there was much debate about who was the source of the odors plaguing the Mecca community. And I, for one, say shame to whoever is a responsible party. Because in the end, this predicament has harmed children, the very ones who we as adults have been given the task of protecting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jacqueline Boulay.
Dear Chairman Wachowski and members of the Assembly Committee, my name is Jacqueline Bull, and I am a resident of Mecca, California. I have lived in the Coachella Valley for the past 18 years and built a family here during that time. I'm here tonight to give testimony to the effects on our children and community since December 15th, 2010, from toxins released into our air by a so-called green operation in our community. December 15, 2010 marked the date of a rapid decline in my children's health as well as in my own. I never would have believed that something so detrimental could go unseen here in America. An unpermitted facility full of toxins not even 2 miles from where my children go to learn, in hopes that one day they might have the ability to make a better life for themselves. On December 15th, my children were in a lockdown at their school because of an unseen danger that lurked. An odor, or a gas-like vapor, had come over the school at San Martinez Elementary. This odor sickened both students and teachers, and they all were forced to remain indoors as paramedics came to treat many people. Since then, my children have been treated for infections such as strep throat, bronchitis, sinus infections, ear infections, and so on. They have also developed symptoms like severe bloody noses, vomiting, persistent headaches, stomach pain, sudden vision decline, and even sleep apnea. These illnesses have affected every aspect of our lives. Our concern is that our health may never be totally restored. My children struggle to keep up in class with dozens of missed assignments induced by absent days due to illness. Their grades suffer from missing vital classroom instruction from their teachers. Emotionally, they have felt overwhelmed by the added stress of playing catch-up while still not in the best of health. They worry on a daily basis about the safety of air quality and wonder if it's safe to go outside and play. And their suffering has been unjust and unacceptable. I request this state committee intervene to ensure that the parties responsible for this injustice, including state agencies like DTSC, take full responsibility. I ask that individuals be investigated and a full audit take place to explain how and why such an oversight ever occurred. And finally, I ask that every measure be taken to prevent an outrage of this proportion from ever taking place again. Respectfully.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. You heard that an audit is under the process right now. Finally, Claudia Figueroa. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable panel. My name is Claudia Figueroa, and I am resident of Coachella Valley since 5 years ago. But having suffered from asthma since I was a kid. When I married 13 years ago, and I moved an area with less dust than mine, I saw my problems diminish to the point of almost disappearing. When I moved to the valley 5 years ago, I arrived at Duroville, and my problems started to resurface due to the reburns they did at the time.
when the big also broke it up, Duro Bill, I decided that I want another life for my son. And we moved to Mecca, to an apartment complex in front of Mecca School. I again saw my problems disappearing. Then again, of January of 2 years, I started again to develop the no symptoms of asthma attack. Even when the residents raised their concern about the others, we did not receive the proper attention. It all summed up to this month, when even of my husband's birthday, we could be celebrating because I was feeling sick. And 3 days after, on May 27, I was taken on emergency care in JFK Memorial Hospital because an acute chest pain and lack of breath, even as others have diminished. It feels like you are trying to breathe underwater, or as a lot of people say, like a fish out of the water. The answer that you feel is something you can describe in words, and what affects me the most is to know that I'm not only one in this situation. Even the people that have no previous problem had developed problems in the respiratory system or in the skin, in the form of allergies. We need this to stop, and we need it now. I want my life back. My son wants to be able to run all over park without fear of feeling sick. My husband wants to be able to be in a school without worry for either Eduardo or me. We all want to stop because even as a other is visible symptom. We know there are agriculture fields around we don't want people to affected by contaminated food too. Not to mention water contamination. You are the ones that can make this to stop and also the ones that can make sure it never happen again. We want the lines for clean it up and remediation, and we want to know what you can do about it. Please stop the continual shipment of toxic waste to our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, if I just may say just a few words here with regards to our educators that are here and as well our community clinic representative. I thank you for the work that you do. I think that teachers and our nonprofits like our community clinics many times are not valued and recognized as they should be. And quite frankly, I think that you are the role models for our kids. And the fact that you're willing to teach our students in spite of sometimes concerns, right, where you will sacrifice your own health, says a lot about you as well. I respect education. It definitely was my tool for me to go on a higher education, and I know that you're working every single day to ensure that every child, our children here in Mecca area, have that access to a quality education. So I want to say thank you, at least for myself and my staff, for all the good work that you do. And as well to our community clinics. I appreciate the work that you do as well, Doctor. I think it's important that we value your work as well. Many times, we have families that don't have access to health care, they don't have insurance, they don't have transportation. There isn't a sign of any type of cultural competency. But I know that through Clínica de Salud del Pueblo, they are receiving that. So I want to thank you as well. And the parents of the migrant education program and the parents of just our students here, I obviously just want to say thank you to you as well for supporting your child. The first teacher are you. You are the ones that set the guidelines and the parameters and create the vision and the hope and the discipline and the values that they need for them to move on and to prosper. And let's recognize that because too often that's not recognized. So thank you, parents, as well, for moving forward in a way in which you are supportive of your kids. Just want to state that out loud.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to our final panel on part 3 on community response, is the toxic impact on the quality of life. And I'd like at this time to ask Silviano Romero and Mete Vargas Laderas para un Mecca Limpio to come forward with their testimony, if they are here. Silviano Romero and Mete Vargas.
Neither are here.
I think there's a gentleman.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Board, members of the community. My name is Silviano Romero. My family has resided in Mecca since 1963, and I have some questions on the issues of the smell and that haven't been resolved yet. For this effect, it has an impact on our families that are hardworking. It's a hardworking community, and that we can't really go outside and enjoy our barbecues and family reunions that we have outside in our yards. So I'd like to find out what could be done to to that effect. My mom just recently passed away, and the last days she couldn't even go outside to enjoy her garden because of the smell of that. So, you know, I still have my dad. He's an avid gardener, enjoys his yards and that. And I don't know, you know, I'd like to find out why can't we get something of a better quality of life in Mecca. Sometimes, like in our church, we have gatherings outside, we have functions, and because of the smell, you know, it's so hard, you know, you can't really enjoy it. So, you know, I'd like to know, with all this money and re-beautification that they're doing to our community for long overdue, that they've pulled money out to take it somewhere else. Now it's finally getting there to where we get some pretty streets, decent lights, and a lot of other stuff that hasn't been done. I'd like to see my dad and everybody else, you know, that's been there so long to really enjoy and go out to their yard, you know, and be outside without having to worry about. I just got back from the doctor, you know, he's got right now some problems with the health issues on the respiratory disease. So, like right now, I'd like to find, you know, if you can please help us to resolve this situation and, you know, make a good end to all this situation. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.
All right.
Thank you.